All right. Well, hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon. It is noon on the dot. My name is Miranda Joyner, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Succeed and Elevate. We are a nonprofit organization that is committed to helping small business owners manage their stress and burnout as they grow and scale their business. And I am excited to join you once again this month as the host of the Tech Talk for the Bean Path. If you are not connected to the Bean Path and you found us some way, somehow by not being connected via their social media or their mailing list, please make sure that you connect to the Bean Path so that you can stay in the know with all the many, many things that the Bean Path has going on. I want to welcome everyone that I see joining us. I see Nikisha Ware. Hello, Nikisha. Stacy Kirkland, Yolanda Kirkland, Jan Jackson, and MT Walker. Thank you all for joining. I see you all in the chat. I want to encourage you, if you are here with us live in the Zoom, you're more than welcome to drop questions down in the chat. So make sure that you drop questions down in the chat as we get into this really, really good conversation around content designing and UX writing. I have the privilege to introduce our guest today, and I'm really excited about that. And they're going to talk to you about the work that they do. And again, if you have any questions, I'll be monitoring questions here in the Zoom. And if you're joining us live, whether it's YouTube or social media, feel free to drop questions there too. We'll try to grab those as well. The tech team here with the Bean Path will all be monitoring those forms of chat as well. All right. So without further ado, I am going to introduce our guest speaker. If we don't have any housekeeping things to take care of. And Brianna Davis is, and you can call her Bree for short, which I love that. She's a senior content designer and UX writer. And I would imagine that some of you are like, what the heck is a UX writer? And then some of you might know exactly what a UX writer is. But we're going to find out today and be well versed in that. And then she writes smart content that makes digital products easier for people to use. In a nutshell, that is what it is. She's going to talk to us about the work she does. And when you think about so many small business owners and how they can incorporate this into their everyday work. Communications, she has a background in communications, doing websites, ads, email marketing, social media, and content strategy. She grew up in Florida and moved to the DMV, but is currently residing in the good old state of Mississippi. So I want to welcome you to this space, Bree. Thank you for joining us and sharing such a wealth of knowledge in our monthly tech talk. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to pass it over to you. So Bree, feel free to unmic and share your screen. And welcome to Tech Talk. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much, Miranda and BeanPath and Succeed and Elevate for having me here today. I will be doing a presentation on UX writing and content design, and will give you some clarity on what these words mean and how it can apply to you or be a career path you may want to be interested in. I myself, as Miranda explained, am a senior content designer and UX writer, so I do a lot of things with words. I went to school in UCF in Orlando, and my major was in communications. So I initially thought I'd do something like public relations, writing content, helping people with their brand and identity. And then it slowly evolved to me just doing a lot of copywriting for websites, for apps, for people in their branding, and so forth. If you have questions throughout, feel free to drop them in the chat. Otherwise, you can save them towards the end where I'll take a few Q&As before we wrap things up. So first things first, what is user experience? Sometimes they call it UX for short. You may be familiar with the term, but may not know really what it means. Essentially, it's the overall experience people have when interacting with a product or service. And it's not only just regarding digital products. It could include concerts, event activations, simply when you're going to the ATM to pull out money, that screen that you interact with, there's words on there that guides you to get the cash that you want or see what's in your account. And not only that, there's a team of people behind these experiences, products, and services. Some of them are UX researchers, so they're looking and studying human behavior, needs, interests, and trends, and testing to see what works well and what's not performing the best. There are UX designers who see the big picture. They're creating the screens and the components that you see on the page and the interactions to achieve a task or goal. And then there's people like me, a UX writer, a UX strategist, or even sometimes called a content designer. We're providing the words, and we think of the high level strategy of what the words will be on each page or screen. And essentially, we have a manager who handles this all and cares about the business objectives, the goals, and the requirements needed to deliver the product, service, or experience in itself. To go a little bit more into user experience, it's human-centered more than technology-focused. We care about the people. So we use different methodologies that center on human needs, desires, and adapt products and services to that understanding. To the left, you see the typical website or an app or even a tablet. You may be on a website checking out for information or shopping online. How do you do these things? There's design and there's words there to guide you through the process. When you're at a concert, when you're picking out your tickets, you want the best seat so you can get the full experience. There's people behind that who look at the stage design to say, okay, if we're going to do all these things, is that safe for people? How will that sound in this seat or in this row or in this position? And they care about the safety, especially. And again, that example of just going to the ATM to pull out money, there's a screen there that welcomes you when you enter your card, and then you can select your account and do other actions, whether that's deposit money, a check, or just check your balance. A component to UX is the UI, the user interface. This essentially is how the digital product, experience, or service looks and it functions. For instance, when you think of your iPhone, when you hold down the app on the home screen, what happens? The app starts to vibrate, trying to get your attention more, saying, hey, you just did something, paying attention to if you want to remove an app or keep it. There's a designer behind that intention. Common roles in design are typically design roles, but they're particular. So for instance, you may have an interaction designer who cares about those micro interactions. So that jiggle or shake the app does when you hold it down, there's a person who made that decision and they did research and tested and that performed the best versus other effects or interactions. There's the visual designer who cares about the color components, the labels, the buttons, making sure it's inclusive and accessible for all people, and even if you have a disability. And there may be even a hybrid role, a product designer who cares about the visual interaction all together, and they're doing the interactions and doing the color palettes, picking the fonts, and so forth. I myself, as a UX writer and content designer, am always in between these two areas. So I'm doing the UX, I'm helping with the strategy and kind of gathering what information we'll need on each screen to deliver the product. And then when it gets to the UI designer or the UI team, I'm helping them when they say, okay, we're going to put a button here. What does it say? We're going to link to this. What does it say, or how should we format that? That's where I come into play on both sides. Now to just kind of shape what I'm trying to explain to you all. Imagine that you're stranded on an island and you're in distress and need to signal for help. What's one of the first things you would do? You might scream and shout and wave your hands, hoping somebody nearby or on a boat or maybe up above in a plane sees you and comes to your rescue. But if you're doing that for 30 minutes and on, you're going to tire out. And if you have to stay on this island for several days or for a longer duration than you're expecting, you have to think smarter and conserve your energy. So you may start looking at the resources that surround you. For instance, the sand or the land that you're on. You might write a message saying, help me, SOS, save me. You may start looking and finding materials. You might find sticks, or you might find a fruit or a berry, and you can write, help me with the dye. You might write it on the tree trunk. You may find the sticks and you put them together, and then you use the dye to write, help me, and then you start a fire to draw more attention in, because if you're not shouting and making noise, how else will they know that you're here and that you need help? So if a boat's afar, they may see, oh, there's a fire going on. Wait, it seems words on there, help me, the easiest thing to say when we're in distress. That's one way to look at UX writing, having the right words at the right time and using the resources around you to make do. Another way to see it is when you're actually on a website or you're on your phone and you run into a problem or you're hit with an error. You're trying to understand what it's trying to convey, but you may not be able to solve it on your own. You might get frustrated, angry, annoyed. You're like, oh, I just wish I had help. Maybe there's support like a chat box, but the chat box really doesn't understand what you're trying to convey. You may have to call a number, but instead of doing all of that, wouldn't it just be easy to know what the message was trying to convey and get that resolved? That's another way to look at how UX writing and content design comes into play for the UX process. We're trying to help people get from A to B to C to accomplish a task, action, or just enjoy themselves. I hope that helps a little bit to paint the picture. I'll also provide you with a definition. What's user experience in UX writing and content design? It's the words and structure that make digital experiences usable. I have usable underlined here, but that could be swapped out for simple or easy to use. Think about it. When you're waiting for a page to load, what usually pops up? A loading message or a bar that's indicating, hey, we're working on it. Just give us a few minutes. You may even get a percentage or a time frame of when it will be complete for the next page, or if you're downloading something. When you're shopping online, when you see an item that you want, what's the next action? You want to add it to the cart or you want to buy it now. You're looking for some information that conveys that point so you can get it in your cart to purchase it. Even when we're listening to music, whether you're on Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, Songify, YouTube, they all achieve the same goal so we can find content that we want to listen to or engage with. And they all feature a play button in some capacity. They may not all look alike, but there's commonalities between those that you understand. If I hit this button, that's going to activate this content to play. Maybe if you hit it again, it'll stop. Or there may be a stop button there for you. It just depends on the company, the brand, and the experience in itself. Essentially, UX writing connects the strategy of UX with the surfaces of UI, so the visual elements. What we've done in the UX, we've thought of the high-level strategy, what the user will expect or need while engaging with our product, service, or experience. And the UI comes in visualizing it, the color palettes, the buttons, the links, the labels. And we come in to provide the words. UX writing is not marketing. UX writing is not copywriting, but we do reference each other because we're all working for the same goal, task, experience, or service or product. Essentially, UX writing is equal to content design. We're not trying to sell you anything. We're not really trying to promote anything. Once you've made the purchase or you've gotten the item, we want you to enjoy it and know how to work it. So we're going to provide guiding language to get you through the experience. For instance, if you're on TikTok, you see the content that comes up, and there's also like a TikTok shop where there's ads and you can purchase things. That's the marketing and copywriting content coming into play. Now, actually, once you've actually purchased the item, there may be instructions in there. That's more like the UX writing if we're thinking about physical products. When it's the digital space, for instance, we are downloading TikTok. There's content that guides you to setting up your profile and account and how to actually work the app. That's the UX writing coming into it. It's not selling it to you. It's informing you and guiding you throughout the process so you can engage and interact with the product. So who are UX writers and content designers? Like, who would be a good fit for this role? Essentially, UX writers are people who like words. And maybe that's not even the right word for it. Maybe it's love. UX writers are people who love words. And when I say love, I mean love words in all capital letters, because you will be challenged on a day-to-day basis on how many ways you can convey an idea or action. You'll be even challenged on the words that you just decided upon for the design. And you're not only battling your UX partners and teammates, you're also dealing with legal risk and compliance, the lawyers, the experts, and they're telling you what you can say and you can't say. And you're not always going to get it right, but as you listen to the feedback and you take it in, you get better and better. Not only that, you have to love words, but having an eye for design doesn't hurt either. To get more into the mind of a UX writer and their difference between a marketing person or a copywriter or somebody who says they're good with words, essentially you're going to hear the same thing over and over again. And you may hear this in other writing disciplines as well. People don't read. For instance, take this slide. I would hope you're reading all the content here, but maybe only the title captivates you because it's in a big font and it has an emoji. You may not see that second line saying you frequently hear people don't read. And you may see the bullet points at the bottom because they're short and there's some space between it. but don't worry, I'm going to read it all to you. Initially, as a UX writer, you want to keep certain principles in mind. Number one, clarity is key. You always write in active voice. You don't want to talk in a roundabout way or indirectly. We want to speak to you. We use simple language. We don't want to speak tech or use business jargon. It should be simplistic. We discourage words longer than 8 letters, essentially. When I'm providing content and design wires, essentially my words are probably 5 letters or less. If they're longer, it may be a product requirement or a legal requirement, or there's just no better word to use and we just have to go with that. And that's okay too. Brevity matters. Maintain a consistent tone. You don't want to be like, no, we're always even. We're not excessive with exclamation points. We only use them when necessary. We cut unnecessary words. Just get to the point, the meat and potatoes. We're working in confined spaces, so we don't have all day to provide all this content that we already know you're not going to read. People don't read, they scan content. They're looking for the information to get them from point A to B, or what matters most to them. Essentially, you should use short sentences and get to the point. I hope this slide is a good representation of kind of what UX writing is and how content essentially should be formatted. What UX writers do. Before I even get to the words, I'm doing a lot of collaborating, communicating, researching, thinking before I even get into the file. Typically, I'm working in Figma. Figma is a design tool that's the latest and greatest and leading force in the UX space. I've worked for companies that use other tools like Adobe, InVision, and Sketch, but eventually they were all moving towards Figma. As a UX writer, it's not essential to know all the ins and outs about Figma, but I do encourage people to learn more about it and to use it in their workflow. Because the more you get comfortable with UX writing, the more you become a content designer, because you can actually be in the design file and speak to your expertise. You can speak to the words and also help out your design partner if you're like, hey, honestly, I need more space, or we don't need this content. UX writers don't always provide content. We're also sometimes saying, hey, maybe we don't need to say that. Can we take that away? Maybe we're saying too much. Let's say less. Miro is similar to Figma, but it's more streamlined for brainstorm activities, mapping, journey flows. You can essentially use it like Figma, but there's differences to it. The UX of them are different. So I definitely encourage you to get familiar with either of these. You can use them to your own uses or productivity. They're kind of similar to Canva, but they're more high level and simply seen in the business workspace. Tools you might be familiar with, Microsoft Office. I use Word a lot, PowerPoint, Outlook. These are all to communicate with other stakeholders or people on my team or in different specializations. Sometimes I just need an easier way to put my thoughts in the space versus having to work in Figma or Miro. I just needed bare bones. And there's nothing wrong with that. The tools that you have will vary depending on your company, and the way you use them depends on you and how you like to work and how you think, essentially. To the bottom right here is an example of maybe a chart or a flow of trying to just figure out how we're going to create a product or deliverable. You might build this out in Miro, or you might do it in Figma. It's up to you. I do a lot of talking and messaging. So there's a lot of emails, there's a lot of meetings on Teams, Zoom, you name it, we're doing it. I'm talking to other content designers and UX writers in other areas because I want to see what content they already have so we can kind of have similarities if I'm working on another area or another department section and there's a commonality there. Grammarly, you might all know, it's just a writing assistant tool to spot check your work. There are other tools you can use. I've used an AI tool called Acrolinks before, and that was pretty extreme and advanced, but it just depends on you. And again, the writing assistant tools or the tools in general that you have is going to be up to the brand or company that you work for. Jira is just a simple project management tool. This is where my work usually comes from, and then I can give updates of where I'm at with my progress. Rules. UX writers and content designers create rules and standards on how we communicate with our users or people who are interacting with our product, service, or experience. For instance, the way Google talks to you is different from how Microsoft talks to you. The way Facebook talks to you is different from Instagram. There are certain reasons we are pulled to certain brands or companies or technologies versus another. It's overall the user experience and even the way they communicate. You may not even communicate the same on Twitter than you do on Instagram or on Facebook. I know I don't. And another thing, again, before we even get, look, all of these things that we're doing, before we really even get to the words, we're still doing research, whether that's connecting with UX researchers ourselves on our team, or just Googling and seeing what other industries are doing or what's the latest trends that people are seeing. Now it's time for the words. We've done all our typical collaboration and we communicated with the right people. Now our designer has tagged us in the file. Well, they could have tagged us in the file or they could have sketched something. So we could be pulled in at any moment. To the left, you see a sketch. This could just be a pencil and paper. A designer heard an idea from the product manager and they're coming up with the concept. Just for like a low sketch, top of mind brainstorm thing. I could be pulled in here and where they have those straight lines is indicating that's where they're envisioning the content or the words would go. You see even some words labeled here because they're like, okay, this is the navigation area. Now, I may not have the exact words yet because it's pretty abstract, but I can work with it. I could create a strategy. I can put notes here saying, I envision this being the main point and these products here, and we'll pull from the marketing language or something like that. So then my designer takes with my thoughts and starts working on some more stuff. So then bam, they hit me with the low fidelity. You see, it's more cleaned up. They probably use Figma. Again, there's no words really here. And this is actually an example I pulled from when I worked with MoMA on their membership experience. So this is us just mapping out where we think we want the content to go. Again, you see the lines. And then again, I probably would put more sticky notes here saying, okay, this is what I'm thinking. I talked to some people, we can put this product here, or we're expecting this new feature to be here, and that's a highlight. So I'm still mapping it out. So then my designer goes back and gets busy and does some more design stuff. They come back with the mid fidelity. You see a little placeholder content here, meaning, okay, they're ready for me to have the words, and I hope I have them too. I hope I know what I want to say. But right now they just have the placeholder because maybe it's not ready for the actual words yet. But somewhere in this phase, you do want to produce the words. And like I said, it can happen at any one of these stages. It just depends on how much information you have up front. Sometimes you're waiting for information. Sometimes UX writers and content designers are pulled in from the beginning, and sometimes we're pulled in the middle. Sometimes we'll be pulled in towards the end and kind of have to hurry up and put the words in the page. And that's not the ideal situation, but it happens at times. Essentially, the high fidelity, we would hope we're pulled in here. Maybe this is already an existing product, meaning people is already public and people are interacting with it today, but we know a new feature is happening and we want to put it on this existing page already. So sometimes your wires will already come mocked up with everything ready, set to go, and you're just adding in something. But sometimes you're building things from the ground up where you have the freedom to really get creative and innovate and put your ideas on board. And then as you collaborate with other stakeholders, it forms itself and like, okay, we could do this, we can't do that. We're required to do this, and this is not accessible, and so forth. So the conversation will evolve, and where you land, it's different with each product. What helps build the UX design or gets you more secure and confident in the field is knowing the UX laws. I think this is important to know as a designer, researcher, writer, strategist, product manager, any person who works in UX essentially. When you know these laws, then you have the fundamentals and you start with a baseline essentially of design ethics. We always want the design to be inclusive and accessible. We want our products to be useful and for people to feel like they're trustworthy as well. Now, there's a handful of UX laws. We're not going to get to all of them, but I will dive into one in particular. Jacob's Law. Jacob's Law basically says people expect your site to function like the ones they already visit. Consistency enhances user experience and improves overall satisfaction. This is basically saying if it's not broken, don't fix it. So for instance, remember that slide where I had the play button? What do we typically expect the play button to do? Start the content. Now, if I hit that play button and it closes me out of the experience, that's confusing. That's not what I'm expecting, because typically those play button is to start the music and it may stop stop and continue the content. But if it's closing you out the experience or opens something else, that might be a little awkward to people, and I might not follow the mental model users have when they visit other applications or use other music streaming platforms. So now that you've gotten the rundown on UX writing and content design and UX as a whole, I want to give you some examples of what poor UX writing is and what great UX writing can look like. And remember, there's always room for improvement. As a UX person, I'm always improving and constantly iterating on the same products or same goals or same experiences, because we're changing so many things about it, or we're learning new information, or we have new capabilities that's coming into the picture. So let's look at these examples. To the left is the poor, the bad UX writing, and to the right is the more clear and concise version. The left shows error, failed to initialize booking engine, bad request, multiple hotel results or no results, click here to start over. I mean, it's not the best. It sounds pretty like technical. I feel like we could save some words. Click here is not really accessible language we want to say. So this is why this is a bad example. It's a little ambiguous and misleading. If I'm trying to just figure out what the issue is, it's like, why are you telling me all of this? I just need to know what I did wrong. Just get to the point. To the right is a more cleaned up version. No hotels found. Adjust your filters or dates to see available options. And then you have a call to action saying try again. So this informs you on what the problem is. No hotels were found based on your search, and then tells you how you can resolve the matter, and then encourages you to try again. Another example. For instance, say you entered a username and you see this message. Oh gosh, you have entered an incorrect username. Does that mean it's wrong? Is it invalid? Did I have a typo? I'm not sure really what this means. I pulled some of these examples off the net, so the right versions are me just cleaning them up. So I just created this scenario saying the username is not found. Maybe this isn't a registered username. Maybe you typo, or maybe you need to put username together versus having that space between the two words. So we're just going to say username not found. Please try again. At least this tells the user that the username that they entered isn't in the system, and maybe they should review it or check out what they wrote. The third example, you're trying to connect to the internet and you can't. The left example shows no internet connection detected. We couldn't establish a connection. Check your settings and try again. And you have buttons close and try again. It's not horrible. It's okay. We understand kind of what occurred, but could we say less? I think so. To the right, we say couldn't connect. Check your internet connection and try again, and still with the same button actions. So these are just examples on how you can clean up content, how to apply smart brevity, and how to just use plain language or layman's terms. Some use cases of when UX writing or UX can cost a company penalties or have risk. An example, 2017, Apple had to refund millions because kids raked up unauthorized App Store purchases. This was all due to a poorly worded buy button that didn't make it clear it was a real purchase. The lesson to learn here is always write for the worst case user scenario. If your button can be misunderstood, it will be. You don't want to leave room for vagueness or chances for people to misunderstand what's going on. Context is so important. And when you launch these things into the public, people can fine you for these things. They can sue you for them. And we want to prevent that as much as possible. And sometimes we're not always going to get it right. Like I said, technology changes, trends change as well. So sometimes we're just have to play catch up on things. Another example of when companies have to eat their words, in 2019, Uber settled a $20 million lawsuit because their driver sign up promises weren't clear. The vague wording around potential earnings was considered misleading. Content design is compliance design. The lesson here is if legal has to explain what your copy means, rewrite it. Never rely on the fine print. Because how many of us really read the fine print? Like you can't be doing that because we know people don't read already, they scan. So you really have to be upfront and direct. We don't want to be vague. Our last example here is Robinhood. In 2020, Robinhood got fined 70 million because their app used celebratory confetti and playful microcopy, encouraging risky trades. People accused them of gamifying losses. There is a big trend of gaming apps and gambling apps that are popping up lately. And people have to be very careful with where their money is going. UX writing has power. Don't accidentally hype people into lawsuits. We don't want to have celebratory confetti when people are making risks because, again, it gives that gamification like, oh, maybe I should keep doing this. Maybe we can't guarantee they're going to win. So when they're not winning, people get upset. And they start saying, hey, this app is encouraging me to do these things. And that's how you get a lawsuit. So essentially, in this presentation, I hope you learned a few points. I want you to understand great UX writing is usually invisible, and that's not a bad thing. That just means that the writing is so good, you barely notice it's there because it's just guiding you through and you're following along. There's no complications. You're not running into errors. They're clearly communicating with you. You know what's happening. You're able to accomplish your task, action, or just enjoy whatever you're experiencing. UX writing is content design. These two are closely related. UX writing is not marketing. It is not copywriting. It is content design. We're here to inform, guide, and support people. We get to the meats and potatoes. We're not trying to use our big words like superfragilocalculus, expialidocious. No, you save that for your book or for your marketing or creative content. We want to just give it bare bones, less than 8 letters essentially for each sentence when you're constructing it. Great UX writing essentially generates profit. And it can also cause you to lose. It causes losses in profit as well. So that's why having strong UX writing and strategy is so important, and having UX writers and content designers in the room are essential. Because people will say people don't read, but something's guiding us throughout an experience. You can't rely on design because you have to be inclusive and accessible, and the words help with that. And overall, great UX writing makes a difference. It's why we have preferences for certain technologies, brands, or companies, because we like the way they talk to us, we like the way they make us feel, and they're easy to use. If you like what you learned today, I definitely encourage you to research some more concepts related to UX and UX writing. Things like accessibility, making it inclusive and accessible for people of all abilities. Content design, a more high-level view of UX writing. This pulls in the design eye plus the words. User experience design. If you're not really a words person, but you like what you heard today, you might be a great fit for it being a UX designer. If you like to build and like to be creative and innovate, that might be particularly for you. Plain language writing and smart brevity. You may have heard me say short, sweet, to the point, the meat and potatoes. And all I'm trying to say is we're very direct and we don't want to waste your time. We speak directly to the consumer and we don't want to waste their time. If you're interested in AI, natural language processing is similar to UX writing, where you're actually working with AI and machine learning tools to structure words and content and communications. All right. Is there any questions? I know I didn't hear any questions throughout the presentation, but now that I've completed my presentation, any thoughts, questions I'd love to answer?
Hey, Bree, I'm gonna jump in as people might be thinking about questions they might have to drop in the chat. So I think I just saw one pop up. I'm gonna pull up the Q&A thing. I have a few questions that I want to ask, and then we have a question that just popped up in the Q&A. One of the things that, I know some of the people who are joining, of course, they vary from the traditional entrepreneur to tech entrepreneurs and founders and startups. For some people, I know a few people that I see that might be working on apps and things of that nature. And so these are things that they need to consider and think about. So this is very valuable information for that. What would you say is advice you would give to those people who might be designing these things but are non-designers, or they're small business owners who don't have the full XU team but want to create strong content design? What practical advice would you give them if you were guiding them along that journey?
One, I would say find someone who's very strong at writing. If it's not yourself, it could be someone who's in marketing, copywriter, someone who's good with words, and introduce them to UX and see if they could possibly help you with that. Two, I would consult the UX laws because I gave a little highlight of those during the presentation. But if you look at each one of those, that can help you with structuring your content as well because it's kind of giving you the do's and don'ts and making you think more as a UXer versus just, oh, I need to write this content and just say some words, because essentially your words matter and people will hold on to them. So whether you're marketing, you're doing copywriting, what you put there essentially matters. People will say, oh, people don't read, but people do read. I know I do, or I at least scan the content before I make a purchase. So those would be the two things I would do essentially. And maybe even just using a writing assistant tool like Grammarly.
Very good. So, one of the questions here, I think one of the challenges when bringing on someone that is versed in something that you might not be very knowledgeable in is knowing what to look for in the person you're bringing on, or how to train them, or how to get the right fit for that space. And so, one of the questions here in Akeisha where it says, "What are some things we can look for when bringing a UX content designer on our team?" And I think essentially it's like, what are the things we need to do to vet to make sure that they're a good fit? And how do we, and I think just to go a little deeper, she might not be asking this, but I think it's a good way to go a little deeper. What are some of the ways we can acclimate them with our brand? Like if they're not, how do we train them to give us the right wording, to think about the right things, like the legal things that popped up? Those things are alarming and things of concern that we make sure we have the right language so that we can protect ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think the first thing is to analyze or self-evaluate yourself or your brand. Where would you want this person to come in? If they don't have a background in UX or have never been a UX writer or a UX designer or worked in the industry itself, but they have a background in writing and that's their strong skill set, you have to give them a chance to understand kind of what to expect. So first you would say, okay, I want a content designer or UX writer. Where do I want them? If you have an app or a website, okay, that's a starting point. To really see the effectiveness, I would start with an area where you can generate profit or you can see sales, because then you'll see, oh, this is how they're making an impact. Because last month we only had 30% sales. Now that they did some work and looked at some of the content and provided some proposals, now we're seeing an increase to, now a 60% increase in sales. Two, you have to give them a chance to do an your brand. Say if you see someone, you heard them and they interviewed well, you're like, okay, they don't have UX experience, but I feel like we can give them kind of the links and resources to understand kind of what we're expecting, and this is the area we want them to work in, and then start them off getting comfortable with the experience itself. Starting with an audit, you can start flagging the content and saying, oh, that doesn't make sense, or this is too much content on the page. This is old SEO practices. Essentially, you'll want some, like I said, I think having the skill set of having a strong writing background is essential. So if even they're a marketer or copywriter, they understand kind of what goes down in the writing space and how we talk in the voice and tone. And then providing them the education of what UX writing and content design is essentially, and saying, hey, is this something you'd like to tackle? Let them do their own digging, because essentially if they're interested, they're going to research some more and be like, oh, this is something I'm interested in, or I feel like I've done some stuff like this in the past, because I started in communications and I was doing the copywriting, and then I started elevating and was helping with the website launches and working with a remote team in China on how to do the promotional effects on the page and what it should look like and the timing. And so I was like, what is this thing I'm doing? I'm thinking it was a communications manager when it was more of a UX role. So I just kind of transferred my skills over.
That's good. That's good. Nikisha, if you if that answer your question, let us know in the chat. And if you have a follow-up, you can drop it there. Someone said, how has UX content changed since you've been in the industry?
I think people are now seeing the value in it. When you look at some of the a lot of the FANG companies, they have a content design or UX writing team. The label might be UX writing, or they may call it content design, but essentially they have writers who are in the experience and design space. What you're seeing now is, again, with the push of AI, people are scared that their jobs are going to be taken, but in some roles may be elevated. I just took an AI course where I was learning about what machine learning and AI essentially is, and natural language processing. And a lot of it was surrounding language and grammar. They're talking about nouns and verbs. And I think that's really a seat for content designers, UX writers, or people who love words to get into those roles and shape the communications that's happening there.
Very good. This question says, how do you balance business goals with the user needs when writing content?
That's a good question. And I'm not going to lie to you, it's always a dance. You're listening to not only business objectives, but you are also collaborating with other stakeholders or people on your team who have a hand in the product. So that means listening to research, your designer's perspective, the product manager's perspective, and the business goals and so forth. So there is a fine balance, but you have to be strong in what you've heard and what you've researched, and always remember that UX is centered on the people. So we're always advocating for the people. Do we always win? No. Sometimes there's like a compromise. Sometimes we're like, okay, we have to go with this direction for now, but we're going to revisit it later. If you're working in a space and you have longevity in that space and you're able to see the evolution of it, you can create your own backlog list of saying, hey, I brought up this concern and we couldn't do this right now because of XYZ. Maybe next year when they're planning out what's on schedule, you can bring that up again saying, hey, we didn't have time last year to do this, but now there's opportunity since the beginning of the year. Can you work this into a story or feature? And they can fit it in from there if it's truly something worth considering or exploring.
That's good. That's good. I can imagine that is extremely challenging with so many voices and
Yes.
opinions. This one says, how do you collaborate with designers, developers, and marketers when creating content? What does that collaboration look like?
It varies across the companies or brands that you work for and how large your team is. Sometimes you have to just do like an icebreaker when you're new to a team or being onboarded to work with different people, and setting time just to have a journal one-on-one with them, getting to know them, their background, how long they've been with the company, and asking them essentially, how do you like to work? I've had roles where people have never worked with a UX writer or content designer, and I kind of had to lay the land and kind of say, this is what I need. These are the tools I need, the resources. This is the guidance I'm not seeing. Like, we don't have content guidelines from a UX writer perspective. When it's time to collaborate with others, you may just talk to your product manager or the lead on the project, and then they can talk to other stakeholders to buffer or give you more information on any concerns or pain points. Or essentially, you just have to be proactive and put yourself forward and set time aside. And you do have like team meetings where you all can stand up and talk about what you're working on, what are blockers, what you need more information on. So essentially, you just have to be kind of people oriented and advocate for yourself, because it is easy to not feel like your voice is being heard because there are so many collaborators on there, and because UX writers can be pulled in the middle or towards the end, or like, hey, they're just writing the words, and we do a lot. That's a lot of people assume we're just writing words that come out of our rear ends, and we're really like doing research, we're looking at other experiences, we're talking to other colleagues. So pulling them in earlier from the start is the best thing, but sometimes you just get lost in the conversation. But advocation has kept me in a lot of conversations and hone in the point of why UX writing, content design matters, and the difference between marketing and copywriting. You never want to call a UX writer or a content designer a copywriter, because those are two different things. It's not an insult, but it's just more of words mean things, and especially the title. You may see things like UX copywriter, and that could be like a hybrid marketing and UX role, but essentially we want to be called UX writers or content designers.
That's good. That's good to know. What would you suggest for times, Micah? This is a question for Micah from the audience. What would you suggest for times when project owners are wanting a lot more language in a place, usually in hopes of avoiding possible confusion?
Again, if you feel as the UX writer or the content design person that we don't need to say that, You advocate for it and you explain why. You can pull research or you can pull other references within your experience. If you've gone to legal risk and compliance and you've gotten feedback that's similar or close to it, and you just feel strongly like, hey, I don't think we need to say all that because there's enough context around here, or the previous page already said X, Y, and Z. You can take that forward to your legal team. And if they really don't like it, they're going to be you have to get their approval. If they don't approve it, then you have to go back to the drawing board or correct and apply their feedback to get that approval. So there's checks and balances essentially before it's out to the public. If something doesn't look right, doesn't feel right, isn't in compliance, there's other stakeholders to set that boundary and say, hey, you need to have it there, or this isn't enough context. And that essentially is kind of how you justify your decisions and the word choices.
Very good. And this last question says, does this apply for both apps and websites?
First of all, I love all these questions. And yes, this does apply to websites, apps, any technological screens, tablets, ATMs, your refrigerator, and when you're in your vehicle and you're interacting with that interface, that's UX too. There's a team behind and who research and test it to ensure this is the best design where you won't get too distracted or end up in a car crash, or it's too complicated for you to interact with the functionalities and focus on the road. Because essentially you should have your hands on the road and focus on the road at all times, but you want to play some music, but you have the music buttons on your steering wheel too. Again, that's the user experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone made a comment in the comment section, Jan. Hi, Jan. As a small business owner who writes my own content, if I can't hire someone to do the UX writing, what can I do to ensure I'm doing what works? For instance, you mentioned someone might be doing old SEO optimization writing.
Mm-hmm.
So their question is, what can they do to ensure that they're doing what works for them?
One, I feel like if you're wearing a lot of hats as an entrepreneur or a small business owner, give yourself a break, especially when you're writing the content. Maybe you're like, I'm good at writing, or I'm good enough where I think I can get it right. Go ahead and do your draft. Don't just publish that immediately. Step away from that a little bit and come and revisit it later. Look at other websites and how they're describing their products, if there's similarities there, and take that in. And then once you've done that, and maybe you put it in Grammarly, it's like, okay, it's all good, spell checked. I think this is great. You may also want to do A/B testing. So you may have one version of the draft, and you're like, okay, I like this version. And then you do another alternate version, and you compare the analytics to see which one performed well. You're not going to always get it right in that moment. You have to give yourself at least, I'd say, a month to 3 months to see what's working and what's not working. Even when you're doing hashtags, you shouldn't just be using whatever. You should be strategically picking out keywords and seeing how it performs. Oh, I noticed on this post, well, now in the social media space, things have gotten really tricky. So it may not work as it used to. Just have good content, essentially, is what they say, and be consistent. But you want to be strategic even with the keywords that you use. And you should compare which words are working, which one aren't. Even your timing could matter if we're talking about social media. If you post at 10 a.m., I mean, people are really like getting into work or settling in, but maybe around lunchtime, you see a higher engagement or people are checking their phones. You have to, play around with the time to see, okay, I notice I get higher engagement around lunchtime versus when I post early in the morning.
That's good.
So trial and error in research.
Well, I have a question. I have two to three final questions for you. So one, being in the AI space, and we know, of course, AI has completely infiltrated the earth. Okay. So it's literally everywhere. With AI tools getting stronger by the day, how do you see content designers shifting in the future? Like what do you feel like is the future for content designers with the growth of AI?
I'm hoping that we're up close and personal with these tools and machines. I attended the Southern Spark conference, which was AI focused. I think it was like last year or the year before. And I learned a lot about Google, Amazon's AI tools. And essentially AI has always been here, but now we're just seeing it in droves. And I think people are really just going to have to, again, try it out and see how it works for them. If you fully commit to using AI, I don't think that's going to be a successful thing. And you're seeing companies who got rid of their humans or their people teams and swapped it for AI. And they're like, oh, actually, that wasn't a good idea. Maybe we should bring those people back, or we're going to elevate those roles to work with the AI machine. So essentially, I see UX writers and content designers being the ones talking to these machines, working on the communications and the strategies. I took the course from IBM where it was like artificial intelligence fundamentals, and they had a lot of things where it was talking about grammar and structure, context, how things can be, how people write is not always going to be how we have it coded in the back end. So being inclusive of all writing entries essentially. So I'm hoping to be engaging with the product up close and personal and staying in the conversation versus being replaced with a machine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What would you say when you look back over your work that you've done? What is a writing project that you say you are most proud of and why?
Mm, I will say when I worked with this agency, I was still new. I think I was like a year and a half into working in UX writing. And I did one role with an insurance company, and they didn't really know what UX writing was. And so I helped with the fundamentals and building blocks there. So then when I got another role, I worked with an agency, and agency environments are a little bit more rapid paced. So it was definitely a bit of a challenge for me to kind of onboard myself and understand the lay of the land. Growing pains for sure. And then I was working, the client was like a computer hardware client, and they wanted me to talk about like data center solutions and high technical jargon. And I was like, I have no idea what any of this stuff is. So I had to do a lot of research, listening to videos of people talking about the concept, like intelligent fabrics and data centers. I'm like, what does this stuff mean? And trying to break it down in layman's terms, or even if people who understood the concept, that they believe me essentially. So I was just very impressed that I got through that project, even though I was like, this is completely foreign language.
Oh, that's good. That's good. When you tackle something on that you're hesitant about and then you do good, it does build your confidence to move forward. So that's great.
Yes.
So I have a couple of fire questions for you, like fire round
Okay.
questions for you. They're going to be really rapid, and you answer them very briefly, and then we'll wrap up by telling people where they can follow and connect with you. How does that sound, Bree?
That sounds good.
Okay, very good, very good. All right, I promise you, they're very gentle. They're not bad.
Okay, okay, okay.
So what is the one app that you feel like you cannot live without on your phone?
I know it's bad to say X though. Twitter.
Twitter. Okay.
X,
Twitter.
Twitter, yeah.
Got it. And what is one great piece of advice that you've received?
Mm. I guess it sounds corny or typical, but be you, especially in the UX space,
Yeah.
being yourself.
And what would you say is the worst piece of advice you received from someone?
I'm like, I don't know. Can I skip this one? I can't. I really can't think of
Bad advice.
bad advice. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I can't think of one
Okay,
right top of
good.
mind.
That's good if you can't. What is a book that you read that changed your perspective and why?
I'll say any Toni Morrison book. I was just thinking about how I don't have Paradise in my collection, but her words, she's just very intricate in her storytelling, and she just gets deep into your core where you're like, say no more, like say less, and you just have you thinking about just the imagery and what she's trying to convey. And then she'll even just riff off into other things. She's like, girl, where are we going with this? Where are we going now? Hold up.
Very good. And if you could have dinner with one person, here or not here, who would that be?
Oh, maybe I'll say Grace Jones.
Grace Jones.
Yes, I think
Why
she's
Grace
just.
Jones? Now, with a response like Grace Jones, I have to ask why. Why Grace?
Oh, I just find her striking, and just all she's done in her career as a model and just as an artist, a creative, and people clearly pull from her influences. And she just seems to live unapologetically. And my dad's Jamaican, she's Jamaican, so I believe there's a connection there. So I just love her raw energy, and she's still going to this day, living in her truth and being her. So that's a queen right there.
I love it. I love it. Are there any final words you'd like to leave people with? And in addition to that, how can people connect and follow you?
I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to do the tech talk. This was my first time, so I appreciate you guys listening and joining in for the questions. As far as how you can get in contact with me, feel free to email me at brionux@gmail.com. That's BRIONUX@gmail.com. Happy to take questions, give advice. We can even set some time to chat on a video call, or if you live in the Mississippi area, happy to meet in person as well.
And that's Bree, BRIONUX@gmail.com.
Correct. Yes.
Very good. I put that in the chat for everyone.
Thank you.
Hopefully they can see it. And thank you so much, Bree. I appreciate you did a phenomenal job. That was very clear, by the way, the questionings came up. And so thank you so much for sharing and opening people's perspective about something that is a place that people are not that familiar with. And we don't have enough conversations around this, but then you realize you need it when you get to it. It's one of those things you don't think about until you absolutely need it. And you're like, oh, I should know more about this. So thank you for your insight and for giving us your knowledge today. If you are not, again, connected to the Bean Path, please stay connected. You can follow them on social media at the Bean Path. You can also connect with their website to get a list of the many, many events and engagements and classes and sessions and things that you can do over at the Bean Path and the Bean Barn. Okay. So the Bean Path is expanding in downtown Jackson. And so make sure you're continuing to support this growth, because the more we connect and support, the more that they can continue to do this great work that they're doing in the city. And so you can go to the website, it's thebeanpath.org. You can check them out there. And also you can follow them on social media. We do a tech talk every month, every fourth Tuesday. So make sure you join us next month for our next tech talk, not TED Talk, Tech Talk. And we'll be glad to see you around. You all have an amazing, amazing day, a great month.